8-year-old Emma's first airplane ride turned into a nightmare when flight attendant Karen refused her meal, calling disabled children special cases who don't deserve first-class service. But Karen had no idea Emma's quiet mother was the CEO of the company that supplied every meal on that plane. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more Karen stories. Sarah Martinez adjusted her daughter Emma's seatbelt one more time as their flight from New York to Los Angeles prepared for takeoff. Emma, her 8-year-old daughter, had been born with cerebral palsy. Despite her physical challenges, Emma was the brightest light in Sarah's life, always smiling, always curious about the world around her. "Mommy, are we really flying in the clouds today?" Emma asked, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Her speech was slightly slurred, but her enthusiasm was infectious. "Yes, sweetheart. We're going to fly so high we'll touch the clouds," Sarah replied, brushing Emma's curly hair. As the CEO of Martinez Industries, a major airline catering company, Sarah rarely took time off. But this trip to visit Emma's grandmother was special. It was Emma's first time on an airplane. Sarah had booked first-class seats to ensure Emma would be comfortable during the 5-hour flight. The extra space would help with Emma's mobility aids, and she thought the better service would make the journey easier for her daughter. As the plane reached cruising altitude, Emma's excitement grew. "Mommy, I'm hungry. Can we get some food now?" Sarah pressed the call button, and within moments, a flight attendant approached their seats. The woman's name tag read Karen Walsh. She was in her 40s, with bleached blonde hair pulled back tightly and a permanent scowl etched on her face. "What do you need?" Karen asked curtly, not even looking at Emma. "Hi, could we please see the first-class meal menu?" "My daughter is quite hungry," Sarah requested politely. Karen's eyes finally landed on Emma, taking in her wheelchair folded nearby and the slight tremor in the girl's hands. Her expression immediately soured. "The first-class meal service isn't for everyone," Karen said coldly. "Especially not for special cases. We have some crackers in economy if that's more appropriate." Sarah felt her blood pressure rising but kept her voice calm. "Excuse me? We paid for first-class seats and we'd like the first-class meal service, please." "Look, lady," Karen lowered her voice but made sure other passengers could hear, "these meals are expensive and frankly, I don't think she'll appreciate the difference. Kids like her usually just make a mess anyway. I've seen it before. Parents like you think your special needs children deserve the same treatment as normal passengers, but reality is different." Karen's voice grew more condescending. "Trust me, I've dealt with families like yours before. You come on here expecting special treatment, wanting everyone to accommodate your situation. But this is a business, not a charity. The first-class service is designed for passengers who can truly appreciate fine dining, not for children who need help eating." The woman sitting 2 rows ahead turned around completely, her face showing disgust at Karen's words. A businessman nearby stopped typing on his laptop and stared at the flight attendant in disbelief. The nearby passengers began to notice the commotion. An elderly gentleman in the seat across the aisle looked uncomfortable, while a young couple behind them started whispering. Emma tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mommy, what does she mean? Why can't I have airplane food?" Sarah's heart broke seeing the confusion in her daughter's eyes. She turned back to Karen, her voice still controlled but firm. "My daughter has the same rights as every other passenger in first class. Please bring us the meal menu." Karen rolled her eyes dramatically. "Listen, I've been doing this job for 15 years. I know what's best for different types of passengers. Trust me, you don't want to cause a scene over this." "The only scene being caused is by your unprofessional behavior," Sarah replied, her voice slightly raised now. Other passengers were fully paying attention now. A businessman in the front row had stopped working on his laptop, and a woman with her teenage son looked shocked at Karen's behavior. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" asked the elderly gentleman across the aisle, his voice gentle but concerned. Karen whipped around to face him. "Sir, please mind your own business. This is between me and these passengers." "It seems like you're being rather unkind to a child," the elderly man said, his voice growing firmer. "Unkind?" Karen laughed bitterly. "I'm being practical. Some people need to understand their place." Emma started to tear up, her small hands trembling slightly. "Mommy, I just wanted to try airplane food. Did I do something wrong? Why is she being mean to me?" Sarah's heart shattered as she watched her daughter's excitement turn to confusion and hurt. Emma had been looking forward to this flight for weeks, talking about airplane food in clouds. Now this woman was destroying what should have been a magical experience. "No, sweetheart, you did absolutely nothing wrong," Sarah said, pulling Emma closer while maintaining eye contact with Karen. Some people just forgot how to be kind. Karen scoffed loudly. Oh, please don't make this about kindness. This is about being realistic. I'm trying to save you from embarrassment when she can't handle the proper silverware or spills food all over herself. I've seen disabled children make huge messes, and then the parents get upset when we have to clean it up. The sound of Emma's broken voice made several passengers visibly angry. The teenage boy behind them stood up. Hey, that's not cool, he said to Karen. She's just a kid who wants some food. Sit down and mind your business, kid, Karen snapped. This is what happens when parents don't teach their children about the real world. Sarah had heard enough. She stood up, her voice clear and strong. I want to speak to your supervisor immediately. My supervisor isn't available right now, Karen lied smoothly. But I can tell you right now that my decision stands. No first-class meal for her. What Karen didn't know was that Sarah Martinez wasn't just any angry mother. As the CEO of Martinez Industries, she supplied meals to over 60 airlines, including the one they were currently flying on. She recognized the meal packaging, the service style, everything because her company provided it all. Sarah pulled out her phone and dialed a number. Yes, this is Sarah Martinez, CEO of Martinez Industries. I need to speak with Captain Rodriguez immediately. Tell him it's about a serious service issue on Flight 447. Karen's face went pale when she heard the word CO, but she tried to maintain her composure. Ma'am, you can't just call random people and claim to be someone important. I get passengers trying to intimidate me with fake titles all the time. She crossed her arms defiantly. Even if you were some kind of executive, which I doubt, it doesn't change the fact that I make the decisions about meal service on this flight. I've been in this industry for 15 years, and I know company policy better than anyone. Karen turned to address some of the other passengers who were now openly staring. I'm sorry for the disturbance, folks. Some people think they can throw around fake authority to get special treatment for their children. This happens more often than you'd think. The elderly gentleman across the aisle shook his head in disgust. Young lady, I've never seen such unprofessional behavior in my 50 years of flying. Sir, with all due respect, you don't understand the challenges we face dealing with difficult passengers, Karen shot back. Sometimes we have to be firm to maintain order. Within 2 minutes, the cockpit door opened and Captain Rodriguez himself walked down the aisle. He was a man in his 50s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. Ms. Martinez, he said, extending his hand. I got your call. What seems to be the problem? Karen's mouth fell open as the reality hit her. This woman actually was someone important. Someone who could end her career with a single phone call. Captain Rodriguez, your flight attendant here has refused to serve my disabled daughter the first-class meal we paid for. She's made several discriminatory comments and has been openly hostile toward my 8-year-old child. She called Emma a special case, who doesn't deserve the same service as normal passengers, and suggested that disabled children like her should know their place. Sarah's voice remained calm but carried the weight of authority. She also implied that families like ours are looking for charity rather than the service we paid for, and made assumptions about my daughter's abilities based solely on her disability. The captain's expression grew increasingly serious as he looked at Karen, then at Emma, who was still crying quietly while clutching her mother's hand. Furthermore, Sarah continued, when other passengers tried to defend Emma, she dismissed them and claimed she was being realistic about disabled children. This isn't just poor customer service, this is discrimination against a child with disabilities. The captain's expression grew serious as he looked at Karen, then at Emma, who was still crying quietly. Is this true, Karen? He asked. Karen stammered, Captain, I thought it would be better if... Better if what? Captain Rodriguez asked firmly. I just didn't think she needed the expensive meal, Karen said weakly. The elderly gentleman across the aisle spoke up. Captain, I witnessed the entire exchange. This flight attendant was incredibly rude and discriminatory toward this child. She said the little girl needed to know her place. Other passengers began nodding and murmuring in agreement. The businessman added, she was completely out of line. That poor little girl just wanted some food. Captain Rodriguez looked at Emma, who had stopped crying but still looked confused and hurt. He knelt down to her level. Hi there, sweetheart. I'm the captain of this airplane. I'm very sorry that happened to you. What's your name? Emma, she said shyly. I just wanted to try airplane food for the first time. Well, Emma, I think we can definitely make that happen, the captain said with a warm smile. He stood up and turned to Karen, his expression completely changed. Karen, in my 25 years of flying, I have never been more disappointed in a crew member. You've discriminated against a child, violated company policy, and embarrassed our entire airline. Karen tried to defend herself, her voice now shaky and desperate. Captain, I was just trying to manage expectations. I've seen situations like this before where parents set their children up for disappointment. I was trying to be helpful by suggesting alternatives that might be more suitable. Suitable? Captain Rodriguez's voice was sharp. Are you telling me that a paying first-class passenger isn't suitable for first-class service because of a disability? No, that's not what I meant, Karen backpedaled frantically. I just thought. I mean, the presentation of our meals is quite elaborate, and sometimes children with special needs have difficulty. Stop talking, the captain said firmly. Every word you say is making this worse. The businessman from the front row stood up. Captain, I need to add something. I overheard this flight attendant tell the mother that disabled children should know their place, and that she was being realistic about what kind of service they deserve. Those were her exact words. A woman with her teenage daughter nodded vigorously. She also said that parents of special needs children expect charity instead of paying for service. It was absolutely horrible to listen to. Sarah stepped forward. Captain, there's something else you should know. I'm not just any passenger making a complaint. Martinez Industries supplies the catering for this flight, and for 60 other airlines. This flight attendant just discriminated against my daughter while we were literally eating food that my company prepared. The captain's eyes widened as the full scope of the situation became clear. He knew exactly who Martinez Industries was. They were one of the biggest airline catering companies in the world, responsible for meals on hundreds of flights daily. Ms. Martinez, I am deeply, deeply sorry. This is not just unacceptable, it's a complete violation of everything our airline stands for. He turned to Karen, his professional composure barely containing his anger. As of right now, you are suspended from all duties. Please report to the galley immediately and remain there for the rest of the flight. Do not interact with any passengers. Karen's face cycled through emotions from pale fear to red anger. You can't suspend me mid-flight over this. I have union rights. I was just doing my job the way I thought was best. Your job, the captain replied with ice in his voice, is to provide respectful, professional service to all passengers, regardless of age, disability, or any other factor. Instead, you discriminated against a child, violated federal disability laws, and humiliated a family. Security will escort you off this plane when we land, and you'll be facing a full investigation by both the airline and federal authorities. The captain's voice carried through the cabin as other passengers continued to watch the unprecedented scene unfold. Let me be crystal clear, there is no excuse, no justification, and no policy that supports what you did here today. The passengers began to clap, and the applause grew louder as more people joined in. Emma looked up at her mother, confused but hopeful, her tears finally stopping. Mommy, does this mean I can have airplane food now? The captain seems really nice. Yes, sweetheart, Sarah said, hugging her daughter tight and kissing the top of her head. You can have anything you want. The captain is going to make sure you get the best meal on this whole airplane. Captain Rodriguez knelt down beside Emma's seat, his stern expression softening completely. Emma, I want to personally apologize for how you were treated. That was wrong, and it will never happen again on any flight I'm responsible for. Would you like me to make sure the chef prepares something extra special for you? Emma nodded shyly, then surprised everyone by asking, Can I see where you fly the airplane from? Mommy told me the captain sits in the front and talks to the clouds. The captain chuckled warmly. After we eat, I would be honored to show you the cockpit and explain how we talk to air traffic control. Would you like that? Captain Rodriguez personally ensured that Emma received not just the first-class meal, but also a special dessert and a tour of the cockpit. The other flight attendants, mortified by their colleagues' behavior, went out of their way to make Emma feel special. The elderly gentleman across the aisle introduced himself as Walter, a retired teacher. He spent the rest of the flight telling Emma stories about his travels around the world. The teenage boy behind them, named Jake, showed Emma games on his tablet. The businessman even gave Emma his airline wings pin as a souvenir. You know what, Emma? Sarah said as they shared their first-class meal together. Sometimes bad things happen, but they can lead to wonderful surprises. Emma nodded, her mouth full of the chocolate cake that the kind flight attendants had brought her. The airplane food is really good, Mommy. I'm glad we got to try it. As the plane began its descent into Los Angeles, Captain Rodriguez made an announcement over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to personally apologize for an incident that occurred earlier in the flight. One of our crew members failed to meet the standards of service and respect that every passenger deserves. I want to especially recognize a brave young lady named Emma, who handled a difficult situation with more grace than many adults would show." The entire plane erupted in applause. Emma blushed and waved at everyone, finally understanding that she was being celebrated, not punished. After landing, Sarah watched as security escorted Karen off the plane. The once arrogant flight attendant looked small and defeated, her career destroyed by her own prejudice and cruelty. Other passengers pointed and whispered as she walked the walk of shame down the jet bridge. But Sarah wasn't done seeking justice. The next morning she didn't just make a few phone calls, she launched a comprehensive response. Karen's behavior had violated not just company policy, but also federal laws regarding discrimination against disabled passengers. Sarah's legal team, some of the best disability rights attorneys in the country, began building a case that would send a message throughout the entire airline industry. Within a week, Karen was facing multiple lawsuits. The airline terminated her employment immediately and revoked all benefits. Her union, after reviewing the evidence, refused to defend her actions. She was blacklisted from working in the airline industry and faced potential criminal charges for civil rights violations. The story made national news when Sarah decided to share it publicly, not to shame Karen personally, but to highlight the ongoing discrimination faced by families with disabled children. The video of Emma's brave response and the captain's decisive action went viral, garnering millions of views and sparking conversations about disability rights across the country. Major airlines began implementing mandatory sensitivity training programs, and several companies reached out to Sarah's foundation to sponsor flights for families with disabled children. The incident became a catalyst for industry-wide change. Meanwhile, the other flight attendants who had gone out of their way to help Emma were recognized and rewarded by the airline. Captain Rodriguez received a commendation for his professional handling of the situation. 3 months later, Sarah received a letter. It was from Walter, the elderly gentleman from the flight. He had started a foundation to help families with disabled children afford their first airplane trips. He credited Emma's courage and grace with inspiring him to make a difference. Emma kept the wings pin from the businessman on her bedroom wall. She told everyone who would listen about her airplane adventure, focusing not on the mean lady, but on all the kind people she met in the clouds. The story went viral when Sarah shared it on social media, not to shame Karen, but to highlight how kindness from strangers can turn a terrible situation into something beautiful. Airlines around the world began implementing stronger training programs about serving passengers with disabilities. As for Emma, she never forgot her first flight. But what she remembered most wasn't the mean flight attendant, it was the captain who knelt down to talk to her, the old man who told her stories, the teenager who shared his games, and the businessman who gave her wings. "Mommy," Emma said one evening as they looked at her wing pin, "I want to be a pilot when I grow up so I can make sure all kids feel welcome in the sky." Sarah smiled, knowing that her daughter had learned the most important lesson of all, that one person's cruelty could never outweigh the kindness of many. And sometimes standing up for what's right leads to the most beautiful endings of all.